they can just fall in. I'm going to start my lesson, and then you guys can see. All right. Firstly, I want to talk to you about variables, and most of you most probably have questions like, why do we use variables? It's so much extra code that we need to add in, and why can't we just talk directly to the components and do our maths like that, or add sentences with directly from our edits into into a string or into a rich edit or anything like that. Okay, so I'm going to help you clear out this whole confusion about why we need variables, and then I'm going to do a practical example with you guys, and I hope you guys will understand this. Okay, so firstly, what I want to explain to you is that like Delphi, system development kit like Delphi, you have access to the memory. So if you don't know how the memory looks like, I went and I got a nice picture for you, and I'm going to explain it to you. All right, there you go. So there is RAM, okay? That is what is inside your computer, and Delphi has access to this RAM. While we are programming, we can actually create spaces in our RAM. So all these little black chips that you see in there is memory modules. And in Delphi, when we create a variable, we actually create a space in RAM itself. Okay, and we can create an X amount of variables, open spaces basically in RAM, for them to receive a value. All right, so I'm gonna stop this from displaying, then you can see me again. All right, so when we create variables, you must think of a little empty box. As you can see here, I'm holding a little empty box here. So every variable is a little empty box. All right, and this little empty box needs to receive a value. Now, this little box that I create, I need to give it a name. Obviously, because we create so many variables, we need to give them names so that we can communicate with them. But also at the same time, we need to tell that variable, that open box, that empty box, we need to tell it what data type it is allowed to receive. Okay? So if I have 20 variables, I create 20 open spaces in my memory. Each variable has its own unique name and then a data type that it needs to receive. Okay, so I hope that makes a bit of sense to you guys. In all programming languages, they use this concept of variables. Variables is used all over in all programming languages. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go on to my Delphi program. I'm going to display my screen, and you guys will see what I'm doing and how I am explaining it. All right, so without further ado, let's go to my Delphi program. Okay, I hope you guys can see this. I have increased the text on my program. And let me just close there. I've increased the text on my program so you guys could see on your screens. Then we can go ahead. All right. So to explain variables to you guys, I've created this little tuckshop program. Very plain and simple. I'm going to enter 3 prices for these items. They will be integer values, so values that are that hasn't got any decimal points. Okay, it's whole numbers only. Okay, so then we're going to calculate the total, calculate the VAT separately, and then calculate the grand total. Okay. All right, so let's start. I believe most of you or all of you should know these components and how to use them by now. All right, I'm going to go to my code, and I'm just going to re-explain the different types of variables that you can get, data types. Okay, so what I've done here is I've made comments in my code. I've made it under the public section of my program. Okay, you guys will know all this by now. Okay, so under public, I went and I added different variable names. Remember, your variable names can be anything. You can name it anything that you want to. It must just be descriptive of what it should hold. Okay, otherwise it gets a bit tangled, or if you just say variable 1 and variable 2, it just doesn't make any sense, and you will forget as you create big programs what variable to use. All right, so use descriptive names for your variables. Okay, when you create variables, also do not use spaces between the naming of your variables. A space has a lot of meaning in Delphi. So when you create variables, don't add spaces. Okay, so like what I've done here with this variable here, I created a true false variable and I capitalized the first letter of each word. So it's easy to read. Okay, so the first variable that I want to discuss with you is string variables. And I made some comments here, as you can see, can be any amount of characters or a character that contains. It can contain capital letters, small letters, numbers, fancy characters, anything that you can think of. You can type in a string, all right? It will be seen as text. Even if you type in a number, it will be seen as text because you declared it as a string. Then we get to integers. Integers can be any whole number value. So it can also be in the negative, as you can see there, or in the positive, okay? But it stays a whole number. That is an integer. Then we get to our real variable. I just made a variable called price. And there you can say, can be any number with a decimal point. Example, 23.67. It can also be in the negative. So negative 100.15, something like that. Okay. So real values have decimal points, decimal values. Okay. Then I've created a variable called letter. Okay. Meaning a single character. Can only contain one character. Example, A, B, C, hashtag, and so it goes on. So it can only contain one character. That's the whole purpose of char, character. Okay, and then you've got your Boolean or Boolean. Many people have different ways of saying this. I created a true false, and this Boolean, that's how I will call it, can only have the state true or false. So you can literally type in for a Boolean variable. I can call the true false double dot equals, and then I can say, okay, and I type in the words true, or I can type in the words false. Remember, Boolean is not string, so you do not need to use those commas on top, those inverted commas between the true and the false, like we do with string. Okay, all right. So, but that should also be in your textbooks. All right. Now I'm going to go. So these are basically the variable data types that you have to know for now. Okay. Later on, as we go along, in term 2 and term 3 and term 4, you will learn about other data types. All right. But these are the most important ones for now for you to understand and to use. Okay. So string, integer, real, char, and Boolean. Okay. I already created some variables for you, and I want to show you how, if you didn't practice variables a lot, now you will be able to see how I've done it. There's different ways of declaring the variables, okay? One way is if you know that all the variables you are creating is of one data type, then you can type in the variable name, put in a comma, type the next one, and so on. So you can have a whole line with variable names, okay, if they are the same data type, and then declare them all at once. So what a lot of my students have done previously is they also say double dot equals. Remember, double dot equals for me means change to. I teach my learners that if you type in some code and you put in the double dot equals, for me it says change to. When I just put in a double dot, I say declare. Okay, so price 1, price 2, price 3, I declare as integer variables. Okay, and then I just went, I could have added total in there as well, but I didn't do that now. And then I added a VAT and a grand total. Now remember, a lot of the times students also make the mistake that if you, let's say, have integer variables, you will most probably get an integer answer, but that's not always the case. Okay. Here, if you work out that, there will most probably be a real value generated from the VAT. So if you take two integer values and divide them into one another, they could generate a real value. So that's why I made my VAT and my grand total are made real. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my design view, and I am going to use these three components to add a price to. All right, you will see I already named my components, their different names. So my first spin edit is called set price 1, set price 2, and set price 3. Okay, and then I've also created all my buttons and my rich edit, which is called red T output. Okay, let's go to the first button and see how am I going to use my variables. I am going to use my total variable. I'm going to collect those values from the spin edits and save it into variables. So I'm going to call my price 1. I always teach my learners the golden rule in Delphi is the component or variable that needs to receive a value. You call first in code. Okay, so it's set price 1 dot value. The other thing as well students get confused with is when you call variables, you don't need to put a dot something for variables. Okay, variables, as you created them, you call them just like that. There's not a, if you look at my code, price 1 dot set value or dot whatever, and then a double dot equals. No, when you call a variable, you call it as is. Okay, I'm going to do for the last one here, only when you call a component, you will always have a property that you will call a dot something. Okay, so that's just something to make a note of if you get confused of how do we call variables. Okay, so now I've used 3 variables that I've created. As you can see there on top of my code, let me just scroll up a little bit. You'll see price 1, price 2, price 3 are made integer. Okay, 3 empty spaces. Now I'm giving those 3 empty spaces values from 3 different components on my form. I need to work out the total in this button and display it in my rich edit. Now look at this. So I must use total, okay, to work out the total, obviously. Does total have a value at this moment? No, it does not. So I must give it something. What is the golden rule in Delphi? Is you need to, oopsie, spelling. You need to call the component or variable first in code for it to receive a value. So my double dot equals, I always say, total must change to price 1 plus price 2 plus price 3. Okay, semicolon. Don't forget that semicolon. A lot of students make that mistake. Okay, so now I have worked out the total. Now I need to display the total in my rich edit. So I'm going to call my rich edit. It is red t output dot lines dot add. Okay, and I must display total. Now, what do we know about a rich edit? A rich edit can only display string. So what will happen now is I need to display total, which is an integer. They are not compatible. So I need to do a conversion. What is my total variable? It is an integer, and I want to convert it to string. There we go. All right. And then in brackets, I put in total. All right. Okay, I'm not going to worry about currency at this moment. I just want you to understand the whole concept of variables. Okay, so here my code, I'm finished with my code. I've given price 1, price 2, price 3 variables values from my 3 different spin edits. I've worked out the total, and now I'm going to display total. But I had to convert it first. So I'm just going to click here, run. Okay, and then I'm just going to display quickly. Let me just do this. I need to stop. Sorry about this. This is how the Zoom works. And now I'm going to show you my program. There you can see my program. Now I'm going to add in 2 values. Okay, so I'm going to put a 2, 3, and a 5 in there. So item 1 is 2 Rand, item 2, 3 Rand, item 5, 5 Rand. When I click on calculate, it shows me the value 10. Okay, cool. Now I can see this is working. So let me do that. Okay, I hope you guys understood that so far. Let me just show you my Delphi screen again. Okay, there we go. All right, so I know this button is working. Cool. I'm going to go to my next button, calculate VAT. Okay, let me see chat. Oh, somebody's chatting. All right, now it's a pleasure, meneer. It's just another educator who's also on this line. So yeah, now what's going to happen, I'm going to work out the VAT amount. So I'm going to double click on that button. Let me just move up a little bit so you can see the previous button as well. All right, and here I want to work out the VAT. Now this is where variables comes in. Okay, this is so important. Because I've already worked out the total, I don't need to go and call again price 1, price 2, price 3. Okay, I've already worked it out, so I could use now this variable. It just makes my coding so much less to do in the end. Okay, so now let's see here. Yeah, okay. I see now somebody's told me that we need to, I see my timers counting down 2.5 minutes more or less. So after 2.5 minutes, guys, if the session cuts out, I just want you to reconnect again. Okay, it's because I'm using the free version that it's got a time limit to it. All right, so I will tell you when we can go off. Okay, and just reconnect again. All right, so don't stress. Everything is, I'm under control here. I can see everything from my side. Okay, all right, so let's go back to this. I'm using variables to work out values for me. I can just call the values as is, but my coding is going to be so de mekaar. All right, so variables is the way to go, and it looks neater and better to read. Okay. Okay, so I've worked out total. I need to work out the VAT. I've created a VAT variable, as you can see there, and now I'm going to call VAT. VAT, okay, change to, that's what I teach my learners mostly now. It is the total times, remember the little asterisk on top of your keyboard, there on number 8, that little asterisk, that's used for times, okay, and I say 0.15. Okay, if I want to have the amount with VAT included, I will use 1.15. All right. Okay, guys, let's quickly, so I can't use integer to string conversion because it's not an integer. So the words that we use are float to string. Don't ask me why they say float to string, why they couldn't make it real to string. There's some more people. Okay, so yeah, just learn it off by heart, okay? I'm taking the VAT, which is a float, and I'm converting it to string, and I'm just gonna say VAT. All right, semicolon. I'm happy with what I've done here now, and let's see if it works. So I'm gonna run my Delphi program, okay? And I'm going to display it quickly on your screens. Let me just do this, how this program works. Gooi my thing there. Okay, there you can see my program. I'm going to add the same amounts that I did before, but let's admit some more people. Okay, 3 and make a 5 there. We know when we click on the calculate button, it gives me the value 10. When I click on that amount, oh, it's 1.5. No, it's a real value from that 10 Rand. Okay, let's just do it. Okay, more people waiting room. Cool. Let me just see, just get notifications that more people are entering. Admit all. Okay. There we go. Everything is hunky-dory. I hope everybody's now connected. Okay. Cool. So I've successfully worked out the total by extracting the information from my spin edit, giving it two variables, price 1, 2, and 3. I've also then I also worked out the total using a variable and displaying the total. Then when I click on the calculate button, calculate VAT button, I now successfully took the total variable, let me see, admit, total variable, and now worked out the VAT from that total variable. Can you now see, I'm just going to stop this, can you now see that when we do coding, okay, that variables are so important because variables can be used across different, how can I say, across different procedures, okay, like our button procedures. I've used total in this button procedure, but now I can use it in other procedures, okay? Instead of repeating the code of, oh, flip, let me just add these prices again in my VAT procedure button, okay? I'll do it once. Okay, here's some more. Admit all right. Okay, I hope that everybody is seeing this now. I just admitted to another 5 people, okay? So variables are so important to use. All right, now I'm going to my last button, okay, of this program. So I'm going and I'm going to click on calculate grand total. Okay, admit. Let's see. All right, so double click on my calculate grand total. Okay, for some reason it placed it on top. Doesn't matter. We're just going to continue coding here. All right, and as you can see, I've got a grand total variable. So easy. Grand total, as you guys know, and that with grand total, it's obviously the total price plus the VAT amount. So I'm just going to call then total plus VAT. Okay, and that gives us the grand total. Okay, now I'm just going to display it into my rich edit. This time, I just want to show you this is only applicable for real values. As you can see, my grand total is also a real value. Okay, I am going to display it in currency. You cannot do it with integer variables, only with real variables. Okay, it's called float to string F. Okay, F in this float to string stands for format. Okay, there's just a float to string, that's just a normal conversion. Okay, but float to string F is very fancy, and we as educators like to use float string F in our tests, okay? There is no other way, all right? You need to learn this. Okay, so float string F has 4 values inside the brackets, and all 4 values are separated with a comma. So the first thing that you type in is, what variable do you want to convert from a real to a string? In this case, grand total. Okay, then followed by a comma, and then we use the float string F function called FF. And as you can see, when I type in FF, this little window appears. Okay, this option box. Okay, I'm just going to admit some more people. All right, let me just retype it. FF. Okay, there you've got fixed, number, general, exponent, and currency. Okay, I'm going to use currency. There we go. What's cool about this is Delphi can grab your system settings and use it in your program, like the time and date, and now also in what country you are. So if you're in America, you will have dollar signs in front of your currency. If you're in South Africa, like we are, it will put automatically a R, rand currency, in front of it. Okay. Followed by this now, there's 2 more that we need to add here, is how many spaces do I reserve for this whole value that must display in my rich edit. Okay, so I always type in 10. I'm reserving 10 spaces, and of those 10 spaces, I reserve 2 spaces for the decimal value. Okay, so now if I say comma 1, it will only show 1 decimal place. If I say comma 2, it will show 2 decimal places. So you can control how many values must display after the decimal point. So of those 10 spaces, 2 spaces is reserved or are reserved to display that value. All right. Okay, so I'm going to run this program now quickly. And remember, we cannot skip a step in that button sequence. The first button grabs the information, input. It processes, it displays. Then I use the process of the one button to do the other button, the VAT amount. Take that process and use it in my grand total to work out the grand total, the total and the VAT. Okay, so don't try to skip a step to check it out. We have to go through the whole motion. Now I'm going to run my program. Okay, there we go. Why are there errors? Why? What's the problem? Okay, float string F, grand total, FF currency, comma 10, comma 2. Everything looks fine. Now it wants to, oh, maybe because the program was running in the background. Stupid me. Okay, let me start again. There we go. Okay, let me display my Delphi screen to you, my program, share. All right, cool. Now, I'm going to do the same, 2, 3, and 5. Make it easy. Calculate, there's a 10. Calculate that. Oh, there's a 1.5. And grand total, 11 Rand 50. And look, there's the R. You don't have to manually put it in. So if you do it manually in a test, we mark it wrong. All right. Cool bananas. Reg mense. So now showing you all that, I'm going to just display my screen again. I'm going to give you a minute just to have a look at what I have created. Okay, let me see if I can close that. Then I can show you all the code. I'm going to give you, let's say half a minute. And then you can start asking questions if you have any questions. All right. So look at it. You can even take a screenshot from your computer. So you can press PRTSC for print screen on your keyboard. And then you can open up Microsoft Word, for instance, and then you can paste this screen onto your into Word, okay? And then you then have the code, and then you can practice this. But can you see how valuable variables are to use in this instance? Because otherwise it will just get too difficult to read the code firstly, and when using the variables it's so easy to use the variables in different instances, in different procedures of your program. Instead of retyping everything or copying and pasting into other buttons, you do it once and you just call that variable into different places. Another thing, before I ask or give you guys chance to ask me questions, is you get two types of variables, okay? I'm not talking about the data types that you see here, but there's two versions. Let me say it this way. I think it sounds better. Two versions. You've got global and local variables, okay? You've got global and local variables. Okay, yeah, I see. Please, sir, could you scroll up to the green writing so that I could see what to do? Okay, green writing. Where's the green writing? Oh, I hope it's that. I hope it's that. Just to show the different types of variables. Okay. You get global and local variables. Global variables are variables that I create here under var. It already exists in your Delphi program, okay? It already exists there. So under var, when I create variables there, all other procedures in my program, button procedures, you name it, they can communicate and use those variables. And then we've got local variables as well, okay? And those local variables you create within a button procedure, okay? It's not, and when we do that, only that procedure can use that variable. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down now. I hope that you guys have finished writing all this or taking screenshots. I'm just going to scroll down. Oh, here comes a message. Save this as. Okay, guys, you can save this as a variable example or a tuckshop program. Okay, I can see, is there any more questions that you guys have? I can see it here now. Okay, you can type a question. Okay, so I'm just going to show you quickly an example of a local variable. All right, so all the variables, just to go back again, all the variables I have created today is global variables. Okay, this var already exists in my program. Okay, and I can use these variables across many different procedures in my program. As you can see, I have used total there. Oh, God, somebody's. I've used total here. I've used total there. I've used total there. Okay, so it's global. Everybody's access. I can also explain it like if you have DSTV, you with your decoder connect to the satellite that orbits the Earth. Okay. All right, so that should be easy to understand. But when I create local, the code, okay. All right, I have a question here. Please could you tell us what components you have used to type the code? Example, button, speed, and so all right, okay. I'm just going to quickly show you then my design. There you can see I've used 3 spin edits. I've used 3 buttons and a reach edit. Okay, the other stuff is just cosmetics. Okay, the tuck shop, it's just a panel, and I've used a group, a group box to put this in. Just it makes it look Lani. Control forms, for example. Okay, so here's another question. So how would you create a variable that can control all forms? For example, one variable that can change the color of all forms instead of typing it out for each form individually. Okay, yes, you can do that. So you can create a global variable, and you can, in your, how can I say, in your form create, you can already assign it to what color it should be. Okay, and then just attach it. So then you'll call the, how can I say, you will call your form.color, and you'll say change to, and then you just call that variable in it. Okay, so you can predefine, or you can type it in, and you can save it to a variable and just call that variable in all the different components that you want to change its color to. All right, so you can do that. Okay, I hope that answered your question. I'm going to go back to the code again, because I just want to quickly show you local variables for those who don't know. So I'm going to go back to the code. Okay, so these are all global. We've established that. Let's go. If I want to create a local variable that only that button procedure can use. So it's almost like private, okay? Nobody else can see it except that button. All other procedures outside of this button cannot see it. It's like invisible, okay? Then I type in var, okay? And then I can give it any name that I want. So let's say G total. Ooh, look at my spelling. G total, and I make it real. Okay, I declare it as real. And so then I can use this G total in this button. But nobody else, no other procedure, this button procedure, that button procedure cannot see this variable. It is local. It is private, created for this procedure only. Okay, it cannot be used anywhere else. So you must always think, okay, if I create a variable, is it only going to be used in this button procedure, or am I going to use it in other buttons as well? If the question is in other buttons as well, you make it global. Finish and klaar, everything settled. Okay, I'm just going to delete this, but this is what you always do to make private, if you want to call it, private variables, local variables in your programs. Okay, so then it will work. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this screen.